All right, testing one, two, three. Can someone just give me a that I'm all good in the NFL fantasy channel if you wouldn't mind? Everything looks good on my end. Perfect. The man CP says we're good to go, so I believe we're good to go. Awesome. Thank you, thank you. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Have a relative. I should say we have a football game tonight. So pretty exciting. Better than no football, I guess. But Bears and Commanders. Commanders 6-point favorites, 44.5 point total. It's an interesting slate, very interesting. I think the starting points is we got to start with the quarterbacks. I think both of them are underpriced. Howell and Fields. You could make the case that Howell is about $1,000 underpriced. Fields more in the $400 to $600 range underpriced. But Fields obviously has the highest ceiling in this game. Howell not far behind, and you save $1,600 going down there. So I think Howell he's just too cheap. He's going to be popular because of it, and I think it's a good reason. Like he has a pretty safe floor. Adds a little bit of rushing, nothing crazy, but you can see these are really solid games, especially for his first four starts of his career. I don't know if the first four starts, he might have started the game at the end of last season, excuse me. So, but to start the season, the first four games, he's done pretty well. Outside of this Buffalo game, Buffalo is obviously very good. It's not nearly the same opponent tonight in the Chicago Bears, but you can see 19.6 points against the Eagles. 21.3 points against the Broncos, and 17.2 against the Cardinals. We'd take any of those tonight, especially at his price tag at 9,400. So Howell feels to me like a pretty safe play. I'll put safe in quotation marks because sometimes I think that gets thrown around too often. But what I mean by that is I just mean he's underpriced for like his most likely outcome is how I should phrase that. So Howell's in a great spot. I think you could play him at captain or in the flex. Fields, obviously, we already discussed, has the highest ceiling on the slate. Obviously, a ton of rushing upside. Now, we haven't seen that really like come to fruition all that often so far this year. Last year, it all kind of came to a head, or I'm sorry, last week, it all kind of came to a head. 32.9 DraftKings points, was really doing well through the air. 28 of 35, put up 335 yards. Didn't really have a whole lot of rushing production. 4 attempts for 25 yards. And you can see this is not, the rushing has not been as, it hasn't been as good as it was last year, but still he's got 2 games with 9 and 11 attempts. That's awesome. It gives you a really, really safe floor for your quarterback and provides you with a nice ceiling too. So I don't think much needs to be said about Fields. I think he's in a really good spot. So it's kind of the 101 on the quarterbacks there. Now, next thing I want to talk about is these wide receivers, McLaurin and DJ Moore. Neither one is going to come with very much ownership. I think we discussed last week. I have an aggregate, this projection set that I'm using is aggregated across a few different projection sets. So these projections get a little bit wonky here. But let me pull up what I think they'll be owned. It's about correct. Yeah. So I'm showing 33% and 28% for DJ Moore. In the flex. I think both of those guys are going to be a little bit under-owned just because of their price tags, kind of being sandwiched in between Fields and Howell. Both of these guys, have high upside. Not necessarily that we've seen it this year. Obviously, we saw it with Moore last week, huge game. And now that I'm looking at it, he had another 19.4 game week 2. So, the upside is there. 9, 6, and 7 targets over the last 3 weeks. Obviously, much better than his stinker game 1. So I like Moore. McLaurin kind of in the same boat, in the same price range, and same deal. Really good week last week, and a tough matchup against Philly too. And then good week 2 as well, and nothing to scoff at in week 3 against Buffalo, where they really couldn't put up any production. So 6 for 41, considering they only put up 3 points, is not bad at all. kind of same deal. Only 5.1 points week 1, but he's been much better as of late. I think both of these guys provide you with some leverage, and I don't think they're going to come in very owned just because of their pricing. If they were both, $1,000 cheaper or $1,500 cheaper, these guys would be coming with a lot of ownership. It's strictly a pricing thing, in my opinion. So I really like McLaurin and Moore. I'm going to try to get above the field on both of them. Now, it is tough if you play all 4 of these guys, then you really got to punt it off at 1 and maybe even 2 spots. So you got to kind of pick and choose. I do think that one of these guys will get there. Which one, I'm not 100% sure. I think DJ Moore potentially playing from behind. It's a 6-point spread in favor of Washington. So I tend to, if I'm choosing between them, I prefer Moore, but not a strong preference. I think they're both good leverage plays. Running backs. Running back 1 for both teams, Brian Robinson and Khalil Herbert, I think are both in good spots. Between the two, game script would definitely favor Robinson. Like I said, 6-point spread for Washington, so you'd expect them to play with a lead. If you think one of these teams is going to blow out the other one, it's more than likely going to be Washington blowing out Chicago. So that would obviously bode very well for Robinson, who's had a great start to the season. Especially the workload has been great. 19, these are carries, 19, 18, 10, and 14. And again, 10 was in that Buffalo game where they got down early and really couldn't do anything production-wise. But you can see 10 attempts for 70 yards is very good, very efficient. But yeah, and adds a little bit in the receiving game too. Two targets, 3 targets, 0 targets, and 2 in last week's game. So not a huge amount of upside in the receptions game, but he's not a total 0. I think he's got a pretty safe floor with these rushing, or with his rushing attempts at least. And then obviously, like I mentioned before, the game script bodes well for him. So I think Robinson is a relatively good play. He's fairly priced. I think Howell being in this range is going to keep his ownership in check. I'm not going to say he's low owned, but I do think that it'll keep his ownership somewhat in check. I don't think he's going to come in crazy high. So I think Robinson, you can play him at the captain, you can play him in flex. I like him in both spots. I will say, because he doesn't have a ton of receiving equity, if you're playing him at captain, I would consider not playing Howell in the flex, because the way that he really succeeds as in the captain spot tonight is probably through a lot of rushing yards and also getting in the end zone once or twice. So if he does that, there's not a whole lot of production to go around for the passing game. So I would consider if you're playing Brian Robinson at captain, then I would consider not going with Howell. You can, of course, play both of them in the same lineup. I'm just saying it's a consideration. Myself, I'm playing 20 lineups tonight, doing some 20 max. So I definitely have some lineups with some Robinson lineups with Howell and some Robinson lineups without Howell. Herbert, kind of the same deal. He does have a little bit more receiving equity. You can see he's got 2 of his 4 games with 5 targets, and then he's got at least 1 reception in every game. So he's a little bit more involved in the passing game than Robinson is. So I don't think that he'll be scripted out, if that makes sense. So I think that no matter how the game goes, that he's going to be involved. I will say in a blowout like we saw, in week 3 and week 1, I do think that you could see Roschon Johnson getting more involved. But as long as the game is like relatively close, I think Herbert is going to be involved in the rush game and the pass game. And similar to Robinson, if you're playing Herbert in the captain, I do think it somewhat negatively correlates with Fields. So Herbert in the captain spot, maybe consider fading Fields. Yes, I know that's a tough proposition. Fields is a tough fade for sure, especially in this game where there's not a whole lot of upside to go around. More of a consideration, but you can absolutely play those guys together. All right, wide receivers. I think wide receivers in this range, at least Dotson and Samuel, and we'll include Mooney in here as well. I don't have a strong lean on any of these guys. I think Dotson is is fairly priced and kind of in that mid-range. I feel, people might get lost in the shuffle here. He is coming off a 9-target game, was only able to convert 4 of those into receptions, but 9 targets is really appealing and has a 7-target game on his repertoire too. So, excuse me. So yeah, he's got some upside to him for sure. And only had 4 receptions, 27 yards, but did get it in the end zone last week for 12.7 fantasy points. So I think Dotson is, I was going to say he's probably the lowest I'd go at captain, but I do have some Curtis Samuel lineups. But I think either one of those guys are fine to play in the captain. Curtis Samuel's really interesting. If you saw my showdown spreadsheet, I noted that he only has 3 rushing attempts on the season, but you can see these are split into red zone rushing attempts right here. So all 3 of his rushes have come in the red zone. So they're obviously and I don't think that's like a fluke. I think if it is a small sample, so it is potentially a fluke. But there's guys like him, or I'm not going to compare him to Deebo Samuel, but Deebo Samuel gets these rushes in high opportunity areas or high what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it. But anyways, these are high equity rushes. There we go. High equity rushes. It's not a rush, on their own 20-yard line. He's getting rushes inside the opposing 20-yard line. So that's why you can see a little bit more touchdown equity through the rushing game than the typical wide receiver rush, if that makes sense. And then he's got targets to back it up too, coming off an 8-target game, has at least 3 targets in every single game, and at least 2 receptions in every single game. And 7 receptions last week. Week 1, he had 5 receptions. At 5.6, you could do a lot worse than that. So I think Curtis Samuel, you could play him at captain. I do think he's an interesting play to play at captain without Howell too. If you're really trying to get unique, this is if you're playing in like large field stuff. But I do think he's really interesting piece to play without Howell, because if he gets in the end zone on a rush, that doesn't help Howell out at all, and it's also leverage off of his wide receiver counterparts and his running back counterparts. So it's leverage off of Howell, it's leverage off McLaurin, off Dotson, off Robinson, off Gibson, all of those guys. So I think Curtis Samuel is a really, really interesting play tonight, at captain or at flex. So,
Yo, Tristan, can I ask a question real quick?
Go ahead.
Sorry, I joined kind of late. I was just wondering, did you touch on Gibson at all?
No, not yet. I was just gonna we can touch on him right now. So yeah, that's
Sorry,
one.
I'm confused. I wasn't sure which like part of the go through you were at yet. So
Oh no
sorry
no
to butt
no
in.
no problem. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Gibson is an interesting one. I think that he's by far of the cheap pieces.
I
I'll
like
say
him.
you like him, Audi.
Definitely. Yeah, Chris Rodriguez ruled out. Not that that means too much, but that's just one less back they're going to give carries to. And obviously, this is a fantastic matchup. They're favored like 6.5 or something like that at home.
Yep.
And I don't know, maybe Brian Robinson gets hurt. Like Antonio Gibson's good, dude. He just had fumbling issues. He's a wide receiver in college, transferred to being a running back. So we've seen him be an RB1 in the past with volume. Maybe he's not the most efficient, but I don't know. Like, why not? This is a great time, and like no one's going to be on him, right? Like, what's his ownership looking like?
I think he'll be relatively owned. Not anything crazy. Looking like 22% in the flex, and add a couple more for captain ownership. So nothing crazy. It wouldn't shock me if he came in a little bit higher than that, just because I feel of the guys below $4,000, he's the one that people are going to feel the best about. I mean, if you look at these guys below 4K, there's really no one that you feel good about even like getting a couple touches outside of Gibson. But you're totally right.
I like Scott a lot too.
Scott, yeah, absolutely. We'll get to him too. But yeah, Gibson has decent workload in the first 4 games. You can see, what do we got? 4, 10, 13 rushes through 4 games, but he's also got 8, 9, and 10 targets through the first 4 games.
Yeah.
And that includes a 5-target game too, which he only turned into 3 receptions for 7 yards. You would expect him to do more with 5 targets. Obviously, as shown by the week before that, he had 3 targets, 3 receptions, 44 yards. That's obviously, it's probably somewhere in the middle there. If he gets 5 targets tonight, you'd probably expect him to be, 3-4 catches in the 20 to 30 yard range. But yeah, I like Gibson. I actually, when I run my lineups, he comes in a ton of them. So I had to like knock him down a little bit just because I didn't want him in like 60% of my lineups. But as far as the cheap guys go, especially below 4K, even if you include like go below 5K, he's probably the guy I feel best about. I don't love the kickers tonight. I think they're okay, but they're. I mean, this is something I've been noticing too. I don't know if other people have noticed it too, but last year showdown kickers used to be 36, 38, 4,000, sometimes 4,200 at the most. Now it seems like the last several weeks they've been, the kicker that is generally favored or the team total is higher. They'll be in the
It's
46.
fault.
It's whose fault?
Balls deep.
Oh,
He
yeah.
just takes kickers every time, and all he tells everybody to do is go double kicker.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
he's
BD
not in
does.
here. I wish he was. But 100%
Yeah,
your fault.
yeah. BD is our kicker aficionado for sure. So
Didn't go kickers before, so I'm definitely not going him now.
yeah. No, they're definitely like more priced up routinely, I will say. Of course, we've seen kickers, above 4K, but it feels like the last several weeks they've been routinely above 4K, which is kind of interesting. So, but yeah, it all goes back to my point. I think Gibson, 5K and below, he's probably the guy that we feel best about his role. Or feel good about him touching the ball 5, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times even. So we'll see. And it's a good thing to point out. I mean, no one, not me personally. I'm never rooting for an injury, but one game slates, anything can happen. If Robinson gets injured, that's obviously a huge boost for Gibson, who you'd expect to see the majority of the work. And like Audi said, Chris Rodriguez, who's the third back, is out tonight. So even more reason for Gibson to go off if there's he'll be involved even if Robinson is healthy, of course. All right. I think, that's about it. The defenses, and I'd love to get, I see, obviously Audi, we just had contribute, but I see Blake and Doctor in here. So I'd love to get these guys going as well. I'll just touch on the defenses really quick, and then I'd love to get their opinion. But I want to say that, the last showdown, we just saw Seattle defense be the optimal captain. That is not the norm. And typically, at least the data that was being shared before this season, defenses at captain were being played more by the field than they were optimal, if that makes sense. So generally, it's a minus EV play to play the defense at captain, and I think that because of what just happened on Monday night, Washington defense might get a little bit more ownership than they're deserving. So I'm not too thrilled about the defenses, and I mentioned this in chat earlier, but between the two, I actually prefer Chicago's defense, and I'll tell you why. For one thing, it's the savings. There's not a whole lot of cheap pieces on this slate that I feel very strongly about. So saving that $1,400 goes a long way, in my opinion. And then also, I'd have to double check this, but I'm pretty sure that no one has given up more sacks than Washington. I think Howell is leading the league by a pretty decent margin in sacks taken. I remember after week 3, at least, he was on pace. And I don't love the on pace stuff because obviously small samples, but he was on pace to break the all-time season record for sacks taken. So yeah, between the two, you get a $1,400 pricing discount. You get an ownership discount. I think it's leverage on the field. So yeah, between the two, I don't love either defense tonight. I think that there's higher upside plays in the same pricing range as them, but between the two, I actually prefer Chicago's defense over Washington's defense, and I'm fully ready to eat crow when Washington defense scores 2 touchdowns and has 5 sacks on Justin Fields, but that's showdown. So perfect. I feel that's pretty decent rundown of the slate. I'd love to get Blake and Doc in here if you guys are around. Blake, you have your mic on?
Yeah, I'm here. What's up?
What's up, Blake? If I'm sure you just heard me give the rundown there, but please feel free to add anything that you think I missed, and If you feel I covered it pretty well, go ahead and just give us who you're liking tonight. You're welcome to give us 2 or 3 players too if you'd like.
Yeah, my highest exposed players, I think you covered everything pretty well. My highest exposed players, though, are Sam Howell, Curtis Samuel, and Brian Robinson.
Sam Howell, Brian Robinson, and who was the last one?
Curtis Samuel.
Curtis Samuel. Yeah. Can't argue with that. I like all of those guys. I know we touched on Samuel for a bit. I think the rushing equity gives him, a little bit extra boost. 5,600 is a pretty fair price tag for him too. And same with Robinson. Feel he's fairly priced and fairly owned, or his ownership is going to stay in check, like we mentioned, because I think Howell being right there will kind of keep him in check. But yeah, no issues with any of those guys. I like all those guys too. I think I'll be above the field on all of them as well. Doc, are you around?
Yeah.
Yo, what's up?
I'm gonna open my mouth after last time. Honestly.
Doc
did
was
not
famously
go
on
on
Jahmyr Gibbs, which honestly, it's good to point out that in these showdowns there are a million different outcomes that can happen, and the one we see is the one that happens. And if you were to go back and play that game again, it's very likely that there's a totally different outcome. So it's always important to remember that these are 1-game slates. It's highly volatile. So even though Doc was on Jahmyr Gibbs, and that's not how Jahmyr Gibbs over David Montgomery, and that's not how the game played out, there is a world where the Packers go up and Lions are trailing, and they need Gibbs receiving ability to get back into the game. You know what I mean? So don't beat yourself up too much, Doc. I think honestly for the ownership, it made a ton of sense to me to go that way too. So don't beat yourself up too much. But I'd be curious.
The way it played out, like there was no point of hope at all.
Yeah,
throughout
for
that
sure.
whole game.
Man, it is frustrating too. These Lions are very frustrating too. With it seems like they get good, like high upside running backs, mainly DeAndre Swift the last few years, and then Gibbs this year, and they just they say they're going to use them, they say they're going to use them more, and then they just don't. It's kind of bizarre. So, but it is what it is. But Doc, if you feel so inclined, please let us know if you got any high leverage plays that you're taking tonight.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've grown up a Carolina fan, so I may be a little bit biased. But I think it's pretty clearly De'Ami Brown just jumping off the charts for me, because, I mean, he's expensive for the shit players, I'll be honest, but at the same time, this guy is a freakish athlete. And as far as yards per target, I saw somewhere around 16 point something yards per reception on this year, yards per catch. And I remember last year at some point he was top 20 in the NFL as far as air yards, not like prospective air yards. I don't remember what the name of the exact statistic is. Just in other words, he's running straight down the field every play on a streak. And that's his job. That's his role. And that's something that I want to target, especially in a showdown slate.
For sure. Yeah, and at $2,800, I mean, doesn't need a whole lot to pay off that price tag. You're going to get him
6% ownership.
Yeah, you're going to get him
He
at
played at UNC with Howell for like 2 years too. He was
Exactly. Yeah, that's where I was leading with that. There's chemistry there too. That was one of his leading receivers at Carolina.
And yeah, this is when Howell was determined to be like the top quarterback prospect. This was like the year before he got drafted. Obviously, he kind of slowed down a little bit once his talent left, but they played like 2 years together. That's when they had Javonte Williams. I think Josh Downs might have been like a freshman at the time, so they were stacked.
Yeah, this guy's a freakish athlete. Ran a 4.4 out of college. Like, he's insane.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming off a 3-target, 2-reception, 51-yard game, which I know in the grand scheme of things is not a lot, but at $2,800 on a showdown, you'd take that. That would probably be the highest scoring player, sub 3K, almost
but
assuredly.
If he gets into the end zone.
Yeah.
If he gets into the end zone, it's not going to be a 7-yard reception for a touchdown. It's going to be 50, 60-yard breakaway, and then he breaks the slate. And I have some at the captain spot, honestly.
Oh man, I love to hear that. I love to hear that. Doc
I'm
is
also playing like 300 lineups tonight.
Oh, okay, okay, gotcha. So you got a little more leeway, but I have a little bit of him, but Doc's kind of convincing me. I kind of want to get him in one or two more, so I like that call. Not someone that was like heavily on my radar before, but that's why I like doing these things, because it's interesting to get other people's perspective, other people's opinion, and yeah, so I like that call a lot, Doc. Thank you for sharing. McBobo, I see you in here too. I'd love to get your opinion. Is there anything we haven't touched on that you'd like to talk about, or if we've covered everything, feel free to let us know who you like.
I just want to say, for what was that? Was that Blake or Doc who was talking about the utter utter collapse of their projected thoughts on Gibbs there? Just imagine though, I was talking up Aaron Rodgers in his second coming right before he broke. So there's going to be things like that. So always take, when we say things on here, if they're bad takes, they're bad takes. If it doesn't work out the way, it doesn't work out.
Absolutely.
We cannot tell the future. We can only go off the information that we have in, and then go give an educated yes, pretty much. So
100%.
I just want to put that in. I don't think anyone who's willing to discuss any of the props, or in this case the DraftKings lineups, don't feel bad if something you mentioned doesn't work out and it goes completely wrong or horrible. It happens. They're bad takes, they're good takes, and sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong.
That's a great point, and thank you for saying that, McBobo. Yeah, we and especially people that are active in the chat. The more active you are, the more stuff you're going to get right and wrong. So the important thing is that we're all trying to help each other and having good discussions, and then everyone can make their own choices from there on out. So yeah, very well said, McBobo, and thank you for saying that. Is there anyone that you wanted to mention for tonight's game?
Y'all pretty much hit on everything. Other than I didn't look too much of that. Definitely do like potential for Gibson to might pick up a few more catches here. I don't think Robinson, he's not going to be the emphasis of a passing back. He's going to be rushing a lot. So he's one I do like, but I don't really have a strong lean. I don't know, but I know this is not going to be a defensive game. And I'll probably be completely wrong. It'll be double defense, double kicker, whatever. We all watch those last year's Thursday night affairs. We know, but I honestly feel this game environment is going to be high scoring. At least it's going to be a scoring game. It may not be a 50 burger, but I feel like there will be enough offense that the defenses are going to be relevant in a DFS scenario.
Yeah.
That's
absolutely, absolutely. I don't disagree. I think that neither defense is that great, especially Chicago. So I feel pretty confident that Washington will be able to put up some points, and then Chicago hypothetically playing from behind. I think they could put up some points too. So
you look at if you look at Washington in their games versus some of the worst defenses. You can see where Hal's numbers expand and where they're even competitive in the tougher ones. But you look at a team like when what was it, Broncos week 2, week 3, something like that. You see the numbers they elevate. So, and then we know Fields, of course, very talented. If you don't have strong defenses and you have players that have great potential on the offensive side, that's how I see it. Is that they're going to be able to put in some work. They're going to earn some paychecks tonight.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well said. Well said. All right, guys. Well, about 15 minutes from game time, so let's get to some trivia here. For those on the mic, Audi, Doc, Blake, and McBobo, you guys know the deal. If you know the answer, you have to type it in a chat just so everyone's on the same playing field. And we'll do some trivia. Let's. I saw Fletch had a question. Is Fletch? Yeah, Fletch is still in here. So let's get to his lineup here. He's got Curtis Samuel at captain, Justin Fields, Gibson, Cole Kmet, McLaurin, and DJ Moore. So my only issue with this one, Fletch, is I feel like you probably want Howell in here. And I know we talked about Samuel's rushing ability, but you have Samuel. It's like if Samuel does well rushing, that probably takes away from Gibson. And then, but if he does well receiving, then you probably want Howell. And then you also have McLaurin here. So I almost feel like if there was a way you could, get Howell in there, I'm not really sure how you would do it, but just from a correlation standpoint, I would say there probably a little bit of work needs to be done here, Fletch. But individually, I like all of these players, and I like pairing Fields with Kmet. I like Moore and McLaurin as leverage plays like we discussed earlier. But from a correlation standpoint, I feel like you'd either want to get Howell in here or maybe remove Gibson. I don't know. There's a few different options there, but yeah, as always, good luck, Fletch. All right, guys, let's get to some trivia here. This is brought to us by Fantasy Sports King, who is always super, super helpful with the with trivia. He's always hitting me up and asking if I have questions already for the night. It makes it a lot easier on me, and it's also good to get some other people's questions out there. So thanks to Fantasy Sports King, as always. If you're watching on YouTube right now, make sure you get over into the Discord, because that's where first come, first serve. Whoever answers the question first in the NFL Fantasy channel will get $5 from me. Probably going to be around the first quarter or so, because I'll be getting my lineups in right before the game here. All right. First question. Before they were the Washington Redskins, and excuse my language if that's offensive at all. Before they were the Washington Redskins, they were founded in 1932. What was their first ever city and team name? Before they were the Washington... Oh, CP already got it. Man CP, let's throw some fire emojis at the Man CP. And Chill and McWans, I hope I'm saying that right, we're right behind there, so very good. We'll throw... What should we give them? Little rocket emojis for the runner-ups there. Good job, guys. You did have the right the right answer there, but the Man CP comes in first. Very nice work. Send me CP. Send me your Venmo or Cash App or PayPal, and I will get that to you as quickly as I can. All right. McWans, appreciate it, gang. Yeah, of course. G Clips was right there too. Had the right answer. Yeah, Fantasy Sports King is saying McBobo should have had. He's got the Braves hat in his profile. Very nice. All right, that's a good one. Here we go. Second question. Besides Devin Hester, who was the only other Chicago Bear that scored a touchdown in Super Bowl 41? Besides Devin Hester, who was the only other Chicago Bear player that scored a touchdown in Super Bowl 41? This is a tough one. It's a tough one. See Chris Harris or Rex Grossman, Walter Payton. That's all decent guesses, but no. This was a guy. I'll be totally honest. T. Jones. No. I kind of had forgotten about him almost entirely until Fantasy Sports King brought his name up. Oh, Chill. Very nice. Chill gets it here. Only right that Chill gets it since he was so close to getting the first one. Very nice. Fire emojis for Chill. Mushin Muhammad is the correct answer. The only other Chicago Bear player to score a touchdown in Super Bowl 41. That Devin Hester touchdown too, if you remember, was on the opening kickoff, which was a great way to start off a Super Bowl, I thought. All right, awesome, guys. 10 minutes till game time. I got to get out of here and insert my lineups. Thank you all for tuning in. Chill, make sure you get me your Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal. And then I got $5 coming to CP and Chill. All right, one last one. We'll get Fletch's lineup here. Looks like he made an adjustment. I think this one is way better from a correlation standpoint, Fletch. I think this one's a lot stronger than that first one. I actually really like this one. So nice work, Fletch, and good luck. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Audi, Blake, McBobo, Doc, thanks for jumping on the mic with me. I appreciate you guys, and good luck tonight.
Yes, sir.
Peace.
Good luck, everybody. We'll see you.